Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Marco Argenti, who is the CIO of Goldman Sachs. Marco, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I let's just start with, you deal with a lot of big challenges, big opportunities. What's different this year than maybe this time last year for you?
Well, first of all, I think this year, more than ever, we need to really put technology at the center of everything that we do, because everybody, the whole industry is trying to focus on not only finding new opportunities, but also trying to do more with less. In some cases, because the economic climate and the environment, and so for us, really trying to increase and develop the ability for our software engineers to really be as productive as they've ever been, and really to try to find ways to lift off some of the undifferentiated work and really focus on things that really make the difference and make a big ROI for the firm and for our client. I think is one of the biggest priorities. So if you look at typically where developer time is spent, developers really spend a lot of their time on the tool sets and really the software development life cycles. They spend a lot of time dealing with data. They spend a lot of time essentially with the mechanics of bringing solutions to the clients. And I think the biggest way you can let them be more productive and achieve more is really to modernize their tool chain, to migrate to the cloud, to provide opportunities for education, et cetera, et cetera. So I think most importantly, the role of the engineer has actually changed over the last few years in a way that
engineer and developer, are using those two terms interchangeably, or
say again?
I mean, you're talking about developers, so are you using the term engineer and developer interchangeably?
Yeah.
Or okay.
So engineers, I think, is a little bit of a broader term, because it includes for example, people that work on data engineering, or people that work on say infrastructure, or it doesn't necessarily mean that you're putting code or committing code into production. So I define myself an engineer. I'm involved in architectural discussions, etc. Currently, in my job, I don't commit code to production, so I'm not strictly a developer, but I'm an engineer. So imagine engineer as the broader term, and developer as someone that actually develops code. Okay. So really, the role of the engineer has changed, especially in financial services, because the job is not really about writing software for engineers. It's really about rethinking and rewiring the business in a moment where the whole economy has gone digital. The data is becoming the most important thing that you need to worry about, because that's really where the signals are, and that's really how the whole organization really comes together. And the why, i.e. what you do is related to business, is actually the most important question that an engineer.
So it's a strategic, it's always been a very strategic role. I'm curious, as you're talking about these things, what's coming into my mind is, generative AI, chat, GPT. Is that how profoundly is that changing the role? Because you spoke about some of the tasks that perhaps aren't as necessary to do. Is that already having an impact in what you do and what the people on your team do?
We're actually obviously looking at those technologies very closely, and we're working closely with some of our technology partners. So it is something that has the potential to be transformative. we need to realize that the vision is great, because obviously you can let developers really focus on again, like on the why and on the more in a way differentiating tasks, and take a lot of the heavy lifting out or automate that. But we also have to realize that in the current form, those tools need to be taken with a little bit of grain of salt. So they're really like co-pilot, like Microsoft defines them. They're more like a way to help someone that is an experienced developer, and they're not really about substituting developers in any form. So I think the potential is there. We've seen examples where auto-generated code can be of very high quality. We've also seen examples where developers really need to pay attention, because there might be phenomena like they generally called hallucinations, or there are other terms around that, but really where the artifact might contain errors. And so there is no blind faith towards generative AI, but there is definitely I would say an extreme interest of actually complementing the tool sets for developers, for them to to be able to leverage them in the most effective way.
I've not heard that term before, hallucination, so I'm going to start using that. I know it can't write limericks. I tried to get it to do that and not so good. But you mentioned something that intrigues me, the migrate to the cloud. I would have presumed that most of what you do is already in the cloud, but then at the same time in financial services, it's a different ball game to some extent. Talk a little bit about how you manage that, since so many companies really have, in essence, their cloud first, if that's the right way to put it.
So we are obviously a big user of the cloud, and I think definitely the future of technology and financial services is in the cloud, because the cloud brings standardization of tools, brings velocity, brings elasticity and agility, and those are some of the most fundamental assets that any company needs, because literally the world around us is changing at an unprecedented pace, and so you need to be agile, you need to adapt, and so we see cloud as an accelerator, allowing for more velocity and for back to my previous point, increase developer productivity. I believe quite strongly that the real return of investment of cloud is not too much about in cost saving, but it's actually in improving developer productivity and increasing the output and the quality of the output of developers. That's where you really measure the great return of investment. With regards to our approach, not everything is on the cloud. Obviously, we have a long history of software that was produced and also deployed on premise, and so like everybody else, we're in the midst of a cloud migration. But we take a particular approach on the cloud, which is something that we kind of really think through, and we try not to take sort of a wholesale approaches to cloud movement. First of all, for us, moving to the cloud is an opportunity to re-architect applications, go from monoliths to microservices, embed observability tools, embed controls in the way we put applications on the cloud. We've created technologies that allow us to essentially empower developers to move and to deploy software on the cloud by, at the same time, automatically applying a set of controls that are mandatory really in our industry, both from a compliance and a tech risk perspective.
And that's different.
In terms of approach to the cloud, if I can just add
please go ahead.
Thing. We implement what we call the polycloud approach, which is not quite exactly multi-cloud like in the classic definition, which is you're creating a lowest common denominator of everybody. You're kind of abstracting the cloud or the individual cloud provider. We build a sort of a way to use multiple cloud providers, also offering and leveraging some of their best offering, while at the same time creating a sort of a control framework so that those providers can be used safely. And so really we try to use the best in class of every cloud provider, while at the same time really making sure that developers are in a safe environment, in a compliant environment, so that their movement to the cloud becomes something that it's accretive to the work that they do.
So how does your experience prior to coming to Goldman, you were at Amazon Web Services, AWS. How did that shape your thinking coming into this job? I mean, I'm sure your mission's very different, but did that really, do you think that gave you a perspective unique among those in financial services?
Well, so being on the other side, meaning being a provider or a vendor, if you will, to companies like Goldman, obviously gives you a quite unique perspective. You end up talking to a lot of companies who really try see best practices and learnings. You follow them in a journey, and so I had the unique luxury, if you will, to be in a position where I could actually interact with a lot of clients from various industries. I could drive, digital transformation across various verticals, including companies in the financial services. And I think some of those lessons could be directly applied to what we do. It's also a great way, for me, was a great way to build a network of people in tech that obviously some of them followed us and joined us later on after I joined. So those are some of them. But I think probably the thing that I try to kind of in a way take away from the Amazon experience is really what we call the mechanisms, i.e. the way you're actually building software by using a working backwards perspective from the client. So before you actually start writing a solution, you actually really try to understand what the problem is, coming from, putting yourself in the shoes of the customer. And so we introduced a lot of mechanisms of this kind, but for example, writing a press release, a PR and FAQ as if you were launching the product before you even
start with the outcome and work backwards.
You really crystallize what the product looks like from the eyes of the customer. And so I think this focus on starting from the customer why first, and then understanding the what, and then finally figuring out the how is, a hallmark of Amazon, is also being adopted throughout the industry, but it's really a way to flip, the engineering mindset completely on its head and really trying to find solutions to problems rather than problems for solutions.
Well, it's interesting. I often think of the CIO, your client is in many ways your colleagues, but talk about, you've got a really interesting background. You've been an entrepreneur. I know you were at Nokia, Amazon. Let's start with what attracted you to Goldman.
Well, so first of all, like I always jokingly say, when someone calls from Goldman, you take the phone call. Right. And so, there was obviously Goldman is a great brand, and I was attracted to at least, having a conversation. But I think for me, the last few years at Amazon were a lot about really trying to help companies transform themselves in a world that was just changing in front of our eyes. And so really one of the attractive things for someone that is an enabler is, what would it be if I drive that transformation from inside? So now I'm actually at the driver's seat from the client perspective, inside the client, and I'm actually seeing directly the impact to the business rather than being one step removed. So that to me was I always consider, maybe should I move to the industry? Should I actually move inside one of the industries that I'm serving in order to really experience it from the inside and be one step closer to the business and to the business problems? And of course, financial services was particularly attractive to me. I mean, I'm a fanatic of innovation and velocity. And, financial services is a fully digital business at the end of the day. We don't really, especially at Goldman, we don't have anything physical. We don't have, even brick and mortar presence. We don't have physics. We don't need to build, objects that need to be transported, etc. And so it's all digital. So when you do something, you can see the results right away. And the velocity of the business is and the scale of the business and the way the business is actually impacting the lives of millions of people, and also the future and the creation of entire economies and entire organizations and new ventures and so forth is something that it's really been attractive to me. And so that's what at the end made me kind of jump to the other side. It was almost irresistible to say, okay, it's a market leader in a very fast industry segment that is fully digital. And by the way, we're in the middle of probably the biggest digital transformation that we've ever seen.
Yeah, and it's a term that everybody uses, digital transformation. It's hard to know who's achieved it and who hasn't, and obviously it's ongoing. But you came in as co-CIO. Do you recommend that? I'm assuming that's like a transitional. That intrigues me, because when I see co-CEO, oftentimes that hasn't worked out well. With you, it was a limited period. Do you recommend that? Let's say other CIOs are watching. Was being a co-CEO helpful?
Okay, so that's a very interesting question, because I also thought, is that like a sort of a transitional state? But if you look at the history of Goldman Sachs, we do have a lot of examples that are actually very durable over time, of co-heads of divisions, for example. And I think the main essentially philosophy behind that is that we deal with such a degree of complexity and such a degree of rapid change that actually having various and different perspectives at the top is seen as a value. And so in my particular case, I had the absolute pleasure of working alongside George Lee, who has been in the firm for over 25 years. And really the two of us brought very, very different perspective on the table, while we were kind of unifying on the vision. But then his background and my background are very different. And
what did you bring, and what did he bring?
That was extremely accretive. And then, obviously with the creation of the Office of Applied Innovation, with the entrance of Jared Cohen to the firm, George decided to focus on something else. So I think, obviously for me, I can only say positive things about this experience.
Yeah. What do you think you brought in terms of complementing me? Because I'd like to get some sense as to how you think about the role of the CIO. I mean, what do you see as your mission fundamentally? Is it digital transformation, or would you say it's different?
Digital transformation is like, as you said, you said it. It's a little bit of an abstract word. I think digital transformation for me means cultural transformation of the engineering team. It's really changing the way the engineering team thinks and operates, which means even more practically, putting the customer first, really thinking about a business person, really finding this intersection between technology and business, because nowadays you cannot be an engineer in a vacuum. You need to know your business. And so that to me is a way that you're kind of transforming the profession in a hybrid between technology and business, the same way as this is happening in many other fields. Today, you might argue that a doctor needs to also be a data scientist, and because technology and business are kind of colliding so rapidly and effectively in many ways. The other one is the change of being a provider of services for yourself to being a provider of services for others. So from being a provider of service to yourself to being a provider of services to others. So externalizing solutions. And that's best represented in what we did. A few months ago, we announced the creation of platform solutions, which is intended to be one of the divisions is intended to be a fintech play, where we externalize our services and our technology so that other companies can actually embed them in their own applications. The same way as AWS offers a cloud of IT service, we offer a cloud of financial services. And so going from a sort of engineering as a support to the business to engineering as someone that actually provides external services that generate recurring revenue is a business transformation. And so you have this, and there are many others, but I think there's two for me: putting the business first, understanding the client, having a service-oriented mentality, and then being able to really build services and build technology that can be externalized as technology for the clients are some of the biggest changes that are really behind, I think, what ultimately I need to do here.
So we've seen a lot of shift. Obviously, we've seen some layoffs in big tech. I know Wall Street, that's sort of been the norm. I always associate with rising or falling with the economy. Did the talent challenge shift at Goldman, so having worked in tech? What would you say is your biggest challenge from a talent perspective, recruiting? Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. It's Goldman. So
I would say that my view on this is obviously the numbers might be changing, but the challenge remains the same, which is you want to get the best people and you want to be able to retain the best people, and the numbers might change. So right now it might be a time in which recruiting goes from being more like quality and volume, to just be smart in finding the people that really move the needle and make a huge difference, and finding diverse talent and finding talent in specific disciplines and competences such as data science, such as AI, such as distributed systems. So I think as a recruiting organization, we just kind of had to retool from scale recruiting to really targeted recruiting, and that's what everybody is doing. And I can tell you that the fight for the best of the best has not changed at all. In fact, it has actually intensified.
Obviously, I think working on complex challenges is one of the ways you recruit people, but I want to talk about the people that are your peers and then the board, because in speaking to leaders in general, what do you think is perhaps underappreciated? If you were let's put you in the CEO role or the chairman of the board role, Goldman or elsewhere, what would you be prioritizing more? I know certainly enterprise risk comes up, cybersecurity, but, I always think we get a little bit, recency bias. And so if you could help us see around the corner as to what you think are some of the challenges that we've yet to fully deal with or prioritize?
So I think the regulatory environment is intensifying, and we need to be, absolutely focused on that. And,
privacy laws, or
that has been always like a big challenge for everyone in a positive way.
Okay.
And, I think right now you need to really deal with that at the scale and at the level of precision that is kind of unprecedented. So I think that's why a lot of companies like us are kind of equipping ourselves with the best talent, and then also giving them mechanisms and methodologies in order to deliver services that are resilient, services that are robust, services that are secure, services that are scalable, etc. So the complexity is also becoming a higher complexity in the complexity of the services has become also translated in a higher complexity in operating in a regulatory environment. I think from an opportunity perspective, the sheer speed, if you look at that today, what used to be decades or centuries events, now they're happening on a yearly basis. So the world has been changing in front of us in an unprecedented speed. And so the way you manage data and the way you reason on data, it's one of the most fundamental things for an organization. Try to find small signals in an incredible, changing and noisy environment. And what used to be that you could recalculate, you could actually have batches of data that you could calculate daily. Then it became micro batches that you needed to calculate hourly. And now the whole infrastructure needs to be in real time. Needs to really adapt and process data as it happens. And that is a fundamental rethinking of the whole end-to-end chain, from when the data is produced to where the data is transformed, to where the data is analyzed, where the data is consumed, and then finally is reported. So I think this particular shift is something that we've kind of seen earlier on, and in fact, we have a large investment of people in our data technology, which we also open sourced under the name of Legend. But it's really like one of the big fundamental changes that we've seen, which is going from T+1 or T+2, I mean, to just operating in T0, operating in real time, operating as things happen, and then being able to adapt. And that's true in trading, that's true in asset management, that's true pretty much, obviously it's true in platform solutions, it's true when you are applying, and serving technology to your clients as in the form of a platform service. And I think when I talk to my peers in the industry, one of their struggles is really to try to make sure that the leadership is really in tune with this fundamental change in approach on how compute and data are moving throughout the organization. Imagine going from building a car one by one to building cars in an assembly line. That's almost the same thing. Going from silos where you have applications and data and infrastructure that are divided by businesses to having services that span across and depend on each other and actually can interchange data with each other. So
it's not a budget issue, it's more of a strategic issue of having the strategy move with the same speed as the technology. Is that what you're really talking about?
It is definitely a strategic issue, but it's also like an issue of actually thinking long term.
Right.
And thinking across businesses. So you build things that are common across businesses so that they can talk to each other, even if they don't talk to each other today, but they have the ability to talk to each other. So that businesses can take dependencies on other businesses, so that when you do something that needs to report across all the touch points of a customer, customers are using multiple services more and more. They can be using financing, that can be using trading, that can be part of an investment, that can be part of an M&A. And so you need to be very careful to implement info barriers in the right way, but also being able to, span across when it comes to, for example, understanding how you can serve them better. So today's organizations that are successful are organizations that are tuned to understand their clients and understand the environment and understand the changes and react to them in a matter of seconds sometimes. And that is something that really requires not only technology, but a completely change of approach and thinking of how engineers are actually building solutions.
So Marco, I when you think about yourself as a leader, I don't want to walk through your entire career path, but are there particular experiences you felt you had throughout your career, that one or two that stand out that you think have proven to be especially helpful for you in this role or just in general as a leader? Because again, as I mentioned, you have a broad array of roles that you've been a CEO yourself. What moments come to you when you think, I'm better for having done that?
Well, like the Nokia experience for me, and how it taught me, I think, one of the most important lessons, which is that you need to be conscious and alert of fundamental changes that could actually completely be
industry transformation,
rearranging the table and actually changing who the players and the winners are.
Right.
So if you think about it, Nokia had 60% market share, and then the iPhone came and the whole smartphone revolution came, and in a matter of a few years, the whole landscape and the whole ecosystem changed profoundly. And so that taught me a very important lesson of being alert and having a challenger mentality, even if you are a leader. And that's actually something that I think is really in the DNA and in the culture of Goldman. Goldman really never takes anything for granted. We always challenge ourselves. But I think that to me was absolutely an eye-opener. Understanding the signals of change, understanding the signals of something that could completely change the landscape. And today it could be a generative AI. In some cases, that is actually profoundly transforming entire businesses, like the content creation business. And I think, we really need to pay attention to those signals. Another one that I mentioned briefly is in Amazon, the customer obsession, not just as a theory or as something that you put on the wall, but is actually something that you measure. The obsession of actually having measurements on how your customers and how your clients are actually interacting with the businesses, where are they using, what they are not using, and how can their happiness be inferred by the way they use the product, and how you do run experiments in real time to try to understand what's your direction. So really, this services mentality translated into technology is one of the hallmarks of anybody that has operated in the services space. And then if you think about the explosion of the cloud, where essentially you are powering the infrastructure that your client relies on, and your service level are just their service level are just as good as yours, is something that informed for me the lesson of being obsessed over observability, over client metrics, and really be reasoning on what you measure, because at the end of the day, what you get is what you measure. So the ability to align your metrics with what's important for the customer has been an incredible lesson.
I was going to ask what kept you up at night, but I mean, of course, feel free to share that. But I'm especially interested in what's exciting for you right now. I mean, give me some sense of the landscape. You get into rooms we don't get to go. As you look at the horizon of where we are right now with technology, and both the possibilities and the perils, what really is rising on your radar screen as something that intrigues you? Just as I'll
tell you, so I'll give you three things, which are, some of them are obvious and some of maybe a little bit less. So the first one is, I'm very intrigued, and I said that before, but so I'm not going to elaborate on that. But I'm really intrigued by this change on data from batch to real time, which makes the organization having a heartbeat that is essentially like every minute or every second instead of every hour or every day or every week. So that is absolutely an incredible revolution. And the idea of actually putting compute where the data is, because the data is so big, and not really trying to move data around. And that's a big revolution also in the way things are architected. So there are several companies that have come out from nowhere and they became market leaders just because they understood this simple thing, which is real-time data and putting compute where the data is instead of vice versa. The second one is, I think the cloud has still a big runway because, despite everything, a lot of companies are still largely on premise. And I think I can't imagine that being the future in several years. But I think one of the changes that is happening right now is this idea of confidential computing, where technology now that is even in the chipset, and now we had a lot of conversation, for example, with the CEO of Intel about this, and with some of the CEOs of cloud providers, where the confidentiality of your data in the cloud, it's guaranteed down to the chipset level, down to the processor level. So it's exactly like having it in your own data center. And it's kind of the same change that happened many years ago when digital rights management in media was invented. So people could actually produce digital content without the fear that that content would be copied, very easily. And so if you remember, that started the whole streaming revolution, etc. So confidential compute, I think, is a big deal. So real-time data, confidential compute. And the third one is definitely large models. There has been an unprecedented leap in terms of the journey towards general artificial intelligence, if we're ever going to get there. But it's starting to actually look pretty plausible. And I think for us, the big dimensions there of change are it could definitely supercharge developer productivity for sure, but really anybody's productivity. B, the ability to summarize large quantities of content. So it could give you the idea, the ability as a human, to summarize potentially tens of thousands of documents that you never read into something that really extracts the key information. And the third one is, we talk a lot about automation, low code, no code, etc., citizen development, etc. I think this could be an answer to that, in which anybody could write prompts of exactly what they want in terms of do this task and then that task and then take this and check that, etc., and then turn it into a workflow that is not only executed automatically, that exists today, but it actually adapts when things change and it learns. And so this automata could really create a sort of a next industrial revolution where some of the processes of a business could actually be run by an AI. Processes that adapt and change, not only when you publish a new process manual, but actually in real time with the business. As the business changes, the process adapts. And so this idea of the real-time enterprise, or companies that are kind of adapting their processes as the world changes around them, powered by AI, I think is really what could be the next industrial revolution.
It certainly changes the concept of what a CIO does, doesn't it, in that environment? Yeah. So thank you for joining us, Marco, and look forward to continuing the conversation. Great food for thought.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really great. Thank you for having me.
Of course. No, it was great. Thank you.